Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the Intelligent Consumer Stream. Just to emphasize, this is the consumer stream. So if you're looking for the enterprise stream, it's in the other hall. My name's Rob Gallagher. I'm Research Director for Consumer and Entertainment Services at Ovum, and I'll also be the chair of this track. To give you an idea of the agenda, we'll start with a presentation from me about the trends to watch in 2019 for consumer and entertainment, before moving for a longer-term view of a critical place in the consumer's world, the home. Then we'll move on to a presentation on supersizing competition in entertainment. We did plan to have a fireside chat about this topic with a couple of OTT video service providers. Unfortunately, they had to pull out at the last minute. The good news is that Ed has just finished a piece of research about this very topic, and so we'll be able to give you an exclusive preview of the key findings. And then we'll round off with a view on the role of one of the most important players in the digital consumer landscape, the telco. Okay, so to move on to my presentation, well, for the past few months, I've been living in 2019, not literally, in my head. Last night, I was actually getting some food out of the freezer, and I said to my wife, the best before is June 2019. Is that going to be okay? It's been in the freezer. So it's really been all-consuming for me, and there's a reason for that. I think if I was to pick one overarching trend for 2019 in consumer telecoms, media and technology, it's scale. Everything is getting bigger. Bigger audiences, bigger content, bigger technology, bigger companies, which is presenting bigger challenges for our clients. So we've decided to go big on research. So clients will know that every year we publish a series of reports called Trends to Watch, which are aimed at helping our clients with their strategic planning for the coming year. This year we've published a record number, 18 reports in fact, covering 60 trends with over 100 recommendations for service providers and platforms, content providers, and technology vendors across a diverse array of topics, including AI, OTT video, smart home, and esports. And today I'm going to give you the high-level view of the super themes that connect and unite all of those trends. So let's start with a helicopter view, or perhaps in keeping with some of the themes of the event, a SpaceX view. So you can see that we're forecasting that the entire consumer telecoms, media, and technology services market will grow at a healthy 3.8% to $1.92 trillion in 2019. Now, what will drive that growth? So on this chart, you can see that revenue divided up into separate revenue bubbles. On the horizontal axis, we have relative growth in terms of year-on-year change in percentage. On the Y, or vertical axis, we have absolute change in terms of net change, and the bubbles represent total revenues. And what you can see in terms of the purple bubble is that communications in form of fixed and mobile voice will continue to decline at quite a rapid rate, at 8%. Conversely, the fastest growing market will be, in relative terms, will be lifestyle. So this is the smart home, dating apps, fitness and well-being, and so forth. And that's going to grow at 18.3%. Connectivity in the form of fixed and mobile broadband will be large and relatively fast growing, but not as large and not as fast growing as content. And that is going to have big implications for consumer TMT in 2019 and beyond. Another way to look at the data is to compare or rank the growth rates by the individual segments that make up our forecasts. And what you can see is it's not only content and lifestyle that are driving the majority of revenue growth, it's digital content services and lifestyle services that are driving that growth. So by the end of 2019, digital will have accounted for 26% of revenues and over half of positive growth. You'll notice that we call mobile non-voice, which is effectively largely mobile broadband revenues, fixed broadband, TV advertising, and pay TV as transitional. Obviously not quite traditional, capable of making change, but in terms of growth, increasingly these sectors won't be going anywhere fast, particularly in 5 years' time. So what does that mean for telcos? So if you look at our forecast for core consumer telco revenues, fixed voice, fixed broadband, mobile non-voice, and telco TV, which means TV services or OTT video services offered by telcos, you're only going to see 1.1% growth overall. So while the telco will account for a majority of revenues, 55%, in fact, they'll capture only 17% of growth. These numbers are on a global scale, and that growth will be bolstered by mobile broadband in emerging markets. In advanced markets like the UK, the challenges will be greater. Core telco consumer services will grow by just 0.4% and capture only 7.5% of revenue growth. Now let's look at the TV and video market. As elsewhere, digital in the form of OTT video services will capture the majority of growth, more in fact at nearly 2/3. And you can see that the main categories, ad-funded OTT video and subscription OTT video, will grow at double-digit rates. In contrast, TV advertising, pay TV VOD, and pay TV subscription will be less than 2%. Again, the challenges will be greater in mature markets. In the UK, OTT services will capture 91% of TV and video revenue growth in 2019. So what's required and what's going to happen? One of our super themes is supersize strategies. And we believe that these will have 3 key elements or drivers in the year to come. One, cash. There's no disputing that some of the most successful companies in digital are the tech giants like Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And what's important is not only do they make lots of revenue, they also have pots of cash to spend. So Google, in fact, had over 100 billion in cash at the end of 2017. So that can buy you a lot of, well, pretty much everything. Content, technology, talent, you name it. In addition, this fantastic financial performance means that they have permission to enter and disrupt multiple markets. The permission comes in the form of the market capitalization formed by the share price. So Apple famously passed the 1 trillion mark early this year, and Amazon, no doubt, will do soon. And while Facebook took a bit of a haircut on its market cap to the tune of about 100 billion earlier this year because of its problems with growth and fake news, the market cap to revenue ratio for Facebook is still many times higher than some of the largest and most successful traditional, or should I say, transitional media companies. So what shall they do? Well, they're going to spend a bucket load on content. So if you've been to any analyst presentations or looked on LinkedIn, you've probably seen a chart showing the scary amounts that Netflix, Amazon, and so forth are spending on content. What you may not have seen is the amount of money that the companies that are currently going through mergers or will potentially merge could spend. So here we've added together the spend for AT&T and Time Warner, Disney and Fox and Comcast and Sky. And you can see that it will dwarf the amounts being spent by Netflix, even including the increases which they've revealed already. So that's going to give them a huge war chest to compete on their core strengths against these tech giants. The third C is collaboration. This is particularly important for players who can't scale up. They don't have the resources that the tech giants have or the finances to perform the M&A transactions that the media companies have or the telcos. So audiences will increasingly see subscale players form JVs in order to aggregate their audiences and technology in order to better compete with the likes of Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Netflix. You're already starting to see some of these being formed in Japan and Europe and the US. That would be particularly popular amongst national broadcasters. Second area is interface. So again, players who can't have the scale to become a major media or TMT brand will look to increasingly integrate or curate a growing amount of TV and OTT video content that does have scale into their platforms. The logic being, well, if they can't be the leader in media, they can be the leader in the place that people go to watch TV. The final key area of collaboration will be mobile. Mobile will be particularly important for those aggregation plays because of the massive scale of the market. You probably saw earlier the massive growth rates in terms of mobile. It's also critically important because more and more in the next few years, the smartphone will become the center of the consumer's world, if it isn't already for many people. Okay, on a similar vein, our next theme is instant scale tech. What I mean by this is that increasingly, incredibly, well, maybe not incredibly, but very powerful technologies will appear almost overnight, almost mysteriously and perhaps intimidating in the way that motherships appear in sci-fi films. So to illustrate this, I plotted the installed base or number of devices in use for a selected bunch of hot technologies at the moment, probably ones that you're talking or reading about or even discussing in your board meetings. I haven't labeled them, so would anyone like to hazard a guess at what's going to be, how many devices will be? There'll be 0.3 million in use in 2019. No. What about the 2.8 billion, a category which will probably more than double in size in 2019? And finally, 6 billion, a technology which appears to be huge already. So here's the results. So 5G smartphones, the 0.3 million. Augmented reality ready smartphones are 2.8 billion. And digital assistant ready devices account for 6 billion. The point I'm trying to make is that the consumer tech market has become so large and so layered that it really is possible for major market-changing technologies to appear and evolve incredibly rapidly. So 5G will necessarily take time to roll out because it involves the network, but also new devices and subscriber upgrades. If you compare that with augmented reality-ready smartphones, it's more a case of pushing out an update to operating system software to support the augmented reality dev kit for a large body of devices which are already powerful enough to support it. Digital assistant-ready devices operate at an even higher level than the dev kit in the app, the cloud, and increasingly in AI. This is because they operate not just at those levels, but also across multiple devices. So the reason the number of digital assistant devices is high already is because their providers have already been able to deploy them across all these different layers. What's also important is the role of AI, that with this scale, these technologies will be able to rapidly learn and evolve based on the massive amounts of data that are flowing from billions of devices in the market and in use. In terms of this super theme's impact in 2019, there's 3 areas we'd highlight: connected TVs, augmented reality, and visual AI. So in terms of connected TVs, it's important because if you did some sums based on the previous slide, you'll see that we're forecasting that there'll be nearly 2 billion connected TV devices, whether smart TVs, TV set-top boxes, that's connected TV set-top boxes, and media streamers. And that will really set the scene for a major battle for the TV screen across a number of fronts. Expect Google, in the form of YouTube, increasingly innovate around ad formats for the connected TV screen, and also broadcasters look to really target that opportunity given how well it aligns with their content and traditional positioning. We'll also see Google and Amazon in particular up their efforts to get third-party device makers to integrate their TV operating software into their devices. So we fully expect, for example, that Google will have over 80 partners for its Android TV operating system by mid-next year. Finally, Google, Apple, and Amazon will increasingly look to bring their AI to the smart TV and integrate it more and more into those devices and the services and platforms that connect to them in order to provide new TV experiences and advertising opportunities. The second trend that we'd highlight about instant scale technology is augmented reality. So that massive installed base of fit-for-purpose devices will lead to augmented reality having a second wind, with revenues from augmented reality apps passing 2 billion in 2019. The final trend I'd like to highlight is around AI, and particularly visual AI. So if the past couple of years have been about the rise of voice AI in the form of Alexa and Google Assistant, then in 2019 we'll see the foundations laid for innovation around visual AI. What do we mean by that? It's essentially AI combining with billions of cameras in smartphones, smart homes, and other devices in order to support apps and systems that can see, understand, and react to what their users are doing or trying to do, and the world in general. The fundamental truth is that each technology will sit between you and your customers in some form, and to varying degrees. The big question is what you do about it, how you leverage this technology to provide experiences to your consumers. So, next trend is 5G launches. I think probably established that 5G won't be an instant scale technology in 2019 or even a couple of years after. Rather, 5G will be about planting the seeds of longer-term growth for 5G. So what's the market outlook? We expect that over 20 operators in 18 countries will launch 5G commercially and attract 330,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Crucially, smartphones will probably arrive in any meaningful form in the latter half of 2018. And while we expect device vendors to, at some point, combine 5G with disruptive form factors like foldable displays, we don't expect there's going to be enough room in the devices initially and the bill of materials to support that in 2015. Also, crucially, we don't expect Apple to launch a 5G smartphone until 2020 at the earliest, and more likely 2021. And why is that important? Well, because the launch of the iPhone 4G had a major impact on 4G taking off on a global scale. So Does it matter being first? Will it matter being first in 2019? Well, our analysis suggests that 33% of 3G first movers, 45% of 4G first movers actually increased their market share over time after launching first with those technologies. So operators seem to be getting better at being first movers. The big question is, will they get even better with 5G? I think if they want to, there's three key things they need to focus on: price, quality of experience, and content. So quality of experience, the most successful 4G operators focused on providing quality coverage, capacity, and speed. In other words, they provided a superior product. That might seem like an obvious thing to say, but I think it's still worth highlighting, given that you'll still hear some people say that connectivity is commodified. We don't believe that's the case. There is plenty of mileage and advantage in providing better broadband. That said, the most successful 4G operators quite quickly reduced the price of 4G to the same as 3G, and that was what really drove mass market subscriber adoption. So the final component, which conveniently, given the constraints of Microsoft Smart Art, is the largest, is content. So historically, this has played a growing role. Started a few years after 4G with operators bundling free or discounted access to music apps like Spotify and later video apps like Netflix. We expect mobile-related content strategies become more fully fledged in 2019. So if operators are going to invest in content, they're faced with a classic dilemma: build, buy, or partner. And it looks like the US is going to become a fascinating case study on the answers to these questions. So AT&T is going fully down the build route by acquiring one of the world's largest media companies, Time Warner, in order to develop, own, and distribute its own content. T-Mobile is more going down the route of buying in content from third-party content providers in order to populate the Layer 3 OTT video platform it acquired recently. Verizon, meanwhile, has opted to fully embrace partnerships. It's launched its 5G offer with free Apple TV or Chromecast media streaming device and 3 months of access to YouTube's TV subscription service. Each of these approaches will have trade-offs. So AT&T's will no doubt be the most differentiated, due largely to the super high value and powerful HBO brand and content like Game of Thrones. But it'll also be the most expensive, and not just in terms of content. So AT&T will have to at least match the expectations set by Netflix in terms of user experience and evolution. Verizon's, on the other hand, will be the least costly. Effectively, Google and Apple will provide the TV devices, the TV platform, the content, and quite importantly, the halo effect of their brands. The big question, though, well, before I get to the big question, the consequence of this strategy is that it will end up being the least differentiated, or could be, and so generate the least ARPU. I think the big question is, well, what's the consumer demand? What does the consumer really want? And I think we'll see answers to that, and I think some consumers will like some propositions, but we do think that T-Mobile will become the squeezed middle in this market because will have little of the differentiation of AT&T, but quite a lot of the costs in terms of content and platform that Verizon has chosen to avoid. Okay, so now on to our final trend, shoppability. And as this image suggests, it's about Amazon and its ever all-encompassing ecosystem, as symbolized by this biodome. So what do we mean by shoppability? It's the convergence of advertising and commerce. Stating the obvious, but why is commerce important? Well, you can see from our forecast here that in the red line that the total value of mobile commerce transactions will probably eclipse the entire revenues from consumer TMT services, probably sometime in 2023. So this business is huge. There's a lot of money at stake. Which, of course, brings us to Amazon. So why the Death Star? That's what John Malone, chairman of Liberty Media, described Amazon as, training its death ray on whatever industries take its fancy. I actually prefer the phrase tractor beam because if Amazon does have the potential to destroy industries, then it's only because it's so good at pulling consumers into the Amazon mothership. And so it may well be with advertising. So essentially, what's the purpose of advertising? It's about connecting buyers with sellers, people who have something to sell and people who have money to buy things with. But who needs advertising when you've got Amazon? You can buy everything there increasingly. And we have seen some data from investment banks that show the younger generations, 16 to 34 in the US, now go to Amazon first rather than search engines while they're looking for something to buy. And you can see here how closely the customer journey, the person looking to buy something, matches Amazon's product set. So expect Amazon to launch ever more products which integrate advertising into its e-commerce platform and other properties, and Google and Facebook to follow. Notably, Amazon probably makes about $2 billion, made about $2 billion in the first half of 2018 from advertising. Tiny compared to Google and Facebook, but it did grow at 135%. Also see an interesting twist on the integration of advertising and commerce, which you might call shopping channel 2.0. So clearly, Amazon could play a major role in the convergence of video, advertising, and commerce. And it is reported to be developing an ad-funded version of Amazon Prime Video that enables people to watch the content for free in exchange for watching advertising. That could be very powerful, but we think that YouTube and Instagram have the potential to bring to market some perhaps more innovative or compelling propositions both for advertisers and consumers. Why is that? Well, first of all, when people go to watch Amazon Prime Video, they go to be entertained, to watch a TV show, a movie, or perhaps even sport. But there are hundreds of millions of people who go to YouTube and Instagram to window shop, to look at people unbox the latest gadgets, to watch vloggers talk about their latest style hauls from the high street, or check out what the celebrities are wearing. So these modes of behavior, these platforms have enormous potential to be linked up with commerce. If people are window shopping, why not help them to buy? Everyone's a winner. So, in summary, our key recommendations in terms of supersize strategies. We wouldn't quite say if you can't go big like Amazon or AT&T that you should go home, but you do need to make friends with others. You do need to tap into scale one way or another, whether through partnerships, bundling, and so forth. Insta-scale technology. It's a reality that the way in which these technologies are built and rolled out, that it will be very difficult for all but the largest companies to compete at certain levels. The opportunity for companies to think, how can you leverage these extremely powerful technologies in order to provide unique and valuable experiences to your customers, perhaps that the platform owners aren't that interested in. In terms of 5G, it's about nurturing innovation, studying pricing, thinking about the quality of experience and content. But most importantly, it's a critical juncture to reconsider your role in the value chain and perhaps reinvent some of your business models. Finally, shoppability. Commerce will increasingly encroach on communications and media and lifestyle services. One of the major areas will be in 2019 is advertising. So if you're that business, you really need to fundamentally think, what's the value in your form of advertising for both consumers and advertisers? And other companies should start to think, well, how might commerce impact my business model? So that's it. Thanks very much for your attention. So I'm happy to take a couple of questions if we have any, or equally happy to move on to the next session. Okay, well, in that case, I'll move on to our next session. Our next speaker is Mariana Zamaszek, and she's going to be talking about the road to 2022, in particular, the future of the smart home.